you're getting the trading fees, plus you're getting all of incentive rewards are being given on top. And then all of it just shows up automatically in your wallet. You don't have to stake anything. You don't have to do any lockups. You don't have to click any harvest buttons. All the yield is right there in your wallet. It's 100% redeemable, so you can get back to your rock pool ETH or ETH anytime you want. So that's a high level overview, and happy to answer other questions about how it all works.
Yeah, maybe, and thank you for that high-level overview. And, for those that have listened to the calls before here know that I'm very much a noob when it comes to DeFi protocols on there, right? I think many of our listeners here are very familiar with rETH, right? They know how to swap their ETH asset to get rETH. They know that it earns a yield from the staking of that ETH. But now they're holding ETH. And so what does oETH give them? Can you just kind of walk through a process where, let's say I've got 10 rETH. How do I get oETH, and where is oETH getting its yield from?
Yeah, it's a great question. So say you have 10 rETH, and then you go to oeth.com. There's a dApp right there. You can deposit your rETH for oETH right there in the dApp, and get when you do that, you'll have oETH in your wallet. Behind the scenes, what the protocol is going to do is look for ways to put that rETH to work in DeFi. So there may be, for example, an rETH ETH pair where people are trading back and forth, and they're paying out trading fees every time they swap back and forth. And so the oETH can take the rETH and the ETH, deploy that liquidity, and then earn those trading fees. And then as those fees are accrued, they'll get automatically swapped into more ETH or rETH, redeployed again. And not the trading fees wouldn't be swapped, but any rewards that are offered from Curve or Convex or from other platforms, those would be automatically swapped into more ETH or rETH, so you're getting compound interest. And then, as you're watching your oETH balance grow in your wallet, every day you can see your balance tick up. And right now, oETH is generating about 11.5% APY. And so you can get a nice additional yield on top of what you're getting from rETH. And so again, it's just another way to stack yield on top of yield.
Yeah. And then tell me a little bit about the back end there, the investment or the decision to, reinvest that rETH in terms of liquidity providing or the other protocols. Is it actively managed? Is there like an investment manager that's investing in these, or is it protocol driven by the contract?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, this is all driven on smart contracts. It's all open source. It's all visible exactly on chain. So you never have to question where are your funds, where's the yield coming from. All of it is 100% transparent and visible on chain. This isn't FTX saying, "Hey, trust us, give us your funds." So all of this is on chain. You can see exactly how those decisions are being made. This is driven by the protocol. So when you're minting oETH, you're doing it directly with a smart contract. You can see on the website where those strategies are. Right now at launch, it's Curve and Convex. Those are the two strategies that are being deployed. OUSD, which is the stablecoin version, from which basically the exact same code base that's driving this, but the only difference being, do we accept stablecoins or LSTs as collateral? But OUSD also has support for Compound, Aave, and some of these other protocols. And so you can expect to see, us rolling out those additional strategies in the near future. But it's limited to those, blue chip DeFi protocols that have been battle tested with hundreds of millions of dollars, if not billions of dollars, and have stood the test of time as well. So decisions are being made kind of from the high level of, do you trust this collateral, these types of collateral? Do you trust these blue chip protocols? And then from there, the protocol is deciding how those funds are allocated.
And so once I do this, if I do it, and I'm holding OETH in my wallet, if I sell that OETH, am I selling my rights to claim my deposit, or am I just selling my right to the yield at maturity?
Yeah, so you're you basically one OETH entitles you to one ETH worth of a backing collateral. And so OETH is, you can think of it as a sort of a basket of collateral that is being deployed to earn yield. So if you sell your OETH, you're losing your claim to the backing ETH at that point.
Okay. And then if let's say I deposit 10 rETH and I get some equivalent value of OETH back, I don't know what the conversion rate is. But when I do decide to redeem my OETH, right, to claim deposit back and claim any of these additional APR rewards that the protocol earned by investing in liquidity provision, what do I get back? Do I only get back rETH, or do I get rETH plus a mixture of the other liquid staking tokens that were accepted into that pool?
Yeah, so if you actually redeem with a vault, you'll get a basket of assets back. I mean, it's just basically a pro rata based on what the vault is holding. That said, we don't envision the average person is going to be redeeming with a vault. It's far easier to just swap on our DApp, and our DApp will route you to the best price you can get. There's deep liquidity on the ETH pair. It's easy to get from whatever you're holding back into whatever currency you want, and you should be able to do that basically at parity, right, without taking any loss there. So for the average person, you're not going to redeem with a vault. That's really something that's reserved for power users, arbitragers, that sort of thing. The average user would just swap back out. So you come in with whatever you want, and then you leave with whatever you want as well. Generally speaking, you're better off just swapping on DEX. And again, our DApp will automatically route you to the best price, so you don't have to think too hard about how to do that.
Okay, interesting. And then I noticed, kind of previewing for this call here, that you list a whole bunch of APRs for different, kind of where the yield comes from. And I guess there's the underlying yield, which is what the liquid staking token is delivering. And the one kind of noticed in there is, you were reporting a little bit different APRs from kind of what Rocket Pool reports for its rETH, and maybe that's always just a challenge for trading or our community is just what is the APR for our. I don't know if that's come up in the conversation there a little bit, but they were saying Lido, I guess, is generating 16% and Rocket Pool 2%, but we should be fairly close to each other in terms of the underlying yield. And then
I don't think those are. Yeah, I don't think that is indicative of the APY. I think that is trying to explain what percentage of a vault
got it.
of these different assets. I don't think Lido's not that high and Rocket Pool's not that low. So
your asset allocation, I guess, in the pool is what they're trying to convey there and so forth. Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
And that is based entirely on what has been deposited. So we'd love to see more higher percentage of Rocket Pool ETH in our backing collateral. We just haven't had a lot of people from your community deposit yet. So we'd love to see that happen. We'd love to get that percentage up. You guys are really setting the standard for decentralization and really leading the way on how to do things right in that regard. So we'd love to see a higher allocation of Rocket Pool ETH. At this point, the protocol is not trying to do any automatic rebalancing or shift things around. It's entirely driven by what kind of deposits we get.
Oh, interesting. And then what type of future developments can we expect from Origin Protocol, especially with its relationship to Rocket Pool?
Yeah, well, we're very interested in kind of, like I said, like the decentralization aspect of what you guys are doing. I think it's really exemplary, and we're very eager to partner more closely with you and look at ways we can deepen this integration. On our end, we have a long list of additional yield earning strategies that we want to deploy. End of the day, this product is about making money, helping people stack more ETH. It solves a problem that none of us have enough ETH, and so this is a goal here of maximizing that as much as we can. And so we're looking at new ways to boost the yield, right? New strategies. A lot of it is going to be turning on strategies we've already built, things like Aave, Compound, Morpho. We're looking a lot at the Balancer and Aura ecosystem, as a lot of LSTs are trading on those pools, and so that's pretty high on our list as well. We have some new Uniswap strategies we're planning to deploy as well, and so all of these are just going to be focused around that primary goal of maximizing the yield for our holders.
Excellent. And I invite anybody listening to the call or anybody in our trading channel, which is kind of our community channel in the Rocket Pool Discord, to ask any questions and we can relay them here. But while I wait for the first person to raise their hand or ask a question for it, how does one question I kind of had is how does the protocol make money on this? Do you charge like an asset fee to manage the protocol, or do you take a cut of part of the returns?
Yes, it's fully decentralized. There is a performance fee. It's currently set at 20%. But this is not coming to Origin, the company. This is all coming back to the protocol and to the governance side of it. So we haven't talked much about governance side. Origin Ether is governed by OGV holders. It's a governance token, and so that performance fee is going. It's getting split, right? Right now, it's focusing on how do we actually accrue more flywheel tokens, and by that I mean like Curve, Convex tokens, things that can be used to drive more rewards to the pools in which we're playing. That ensures sort of longevity of the APY that we're able to offer and the rewards we're able to offer to our holders. So right now, that's kind of the immediate focus on how do we actually grow a bigger stockpile of Convex tokens. That means that we can drive more rewards to the OETH pool. Means we can boost the APY for everyone who's holding OETH. So that's the near-term goal. But on Origin Dollar, we're doing a 50-50 split. We'll probably end up with something similar on OETH, where half of it is going towards accruing those flywheel tokens. The other half is being used as an incentive for OGV stakers. And the protocol is owned and controlled on-chain by OGV stakers, similar to Curve's model, with VE token model, where you can lock up your OGV for anywhere from 1 month to 4 years. The longer you stake for, the greater your governance power and economic incentives. So you're rewarded for being a part of the community and helping making these decisions that are critical for protocol. And the longer you stake for, the greater your incentives there. So that's how the governance side works. And then it creates that, as far as the fees are being collected, all of that's coming back to, the security of securing the protocol from governance perspective, and also ensuring that there are future rewards coming for the holders of that pool. So all of it is, the fees are collected to all go back into making the product better in the long term.
Excellent. And I see we're also joined by somebody else here with the Origin protocol Twitter handle.
I believe that's Ryan. Ryan, you there?
Hey guys, sorry I wasn't around for a second. Could you repeat that, please?
We're just saying hello. Thanks for jumping on and setting us up.
Of course, yeah, my pleasure.
Well, I'm not seeing any questions coming through the Twitter Spaces here or in the Discord channel here. But Josh, are there any things that we didn't cover about either the protocol or this new product, OETH, that we haven't talked about that you feel is important for the Rocket Pool community to know?
Yeah, so sort of two things I can leave you with. First, I'll stress kind of the importance of security here. Obviously, safety of your funds is the most important, something we take very seriously. And so, these contracts, even though OETH is only a week old, the code base is based on Origin Dollar, which has been around for 7 years, battle tested for hundreds of millions of dollars. It's also been audited over a dozen times from TrailorBits, Solidified, Satora, and Open Zeppelin. And then the few little changes we made to the code base to have it support liquid staking tokens, all of those have been audited by Open Zeppelin as well. So you're getting some battle tested contracts here. We feel very confident in the safety of them. I have a lot of my own ETH held in OETH right now. The company is deploying a lot of its treasury into this product. So this is something we feel very confident of on the safety of it. And the yields are great. We're at 11.5% right now. It's only a week old. We're closing in on $10 million deposited in just the first week. And for those who are interested in learning more or checking out for yourselves, you can go to oeth.com, and that's the easiest place to learn more, dive into the docs, see how it all works, or click over to our DApp and just experience minting a little bit yourself. Take your Rocket Pool ETH and stack some extra yield on top.
And if folks had questions about this, once going to that website, how do they get a hold of you? Is it best to reach out via Twitter, or do you have a Discord?
Our Discord is probably the best. It's linked from the website there, so you can go to oeth.com, click through to our Discord. Our whole community is there. Our team is committed to building in public, so you can chat right there in Discord with our core developers. You can chat with me. Any help you need, we're all hanging out there, and you can find us any hour of the day. We're happy to answer any questions you may have.
Yeah, and we also have a blog at oeth.com/blog. We just posted an announcement about the Rocket Pool ETH integration, as well as some recent content about Origin Ether. So go read up on Origin ETH or oeth.com/blog too.
Excellent. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure having you come to our community call today and share a little bit about it. It looks like a really interesting and innovative approach, and I'm hoping that folks have a chance to check out that website and learn a little bit more about the integration of rETH with OETH.
Thanks so much. Appreciate you having us on.
Yeah. You guys are welcome to stay for the rest of the call if you like, but we've got kind of a pretty packed agenda here, with this being a bi-weekly, so we'll probably conclude the Origin protocol portion of it and start the Rocket Pool community call. And so, Mav, do we have you back on?
You sure do, Ken. Lang is still going to be a little way away. So what I propose we do is we run through the bi-weekly in reverse, starting with the marketing and media category, and then working our way up. When Lang comes along, he can take over.
Yeah, perfect. So let's start with that here as I flip over to the bi-weekly part on there. And I wonder, before we get into that, I wonder if you could just run through the very first section that just talks about the numbers, just to put things in perspective. You want to give us a quick run through on the protocol growth?
Sure, sounds good. So I'm not sure if this is our largest bi-weekly in terms of rETH growth to date, but it must be up there. Over 20.7% growth in the rETH supply in the past 2 weeks. Annualized out, as we like to do, that is a very large number, 540%. Remains to be seen if that kind of growth can be maintained through the end of the year, but we certainly know that there is sufficient supply from the mini pool side to keep the rETH supply increasing for quite some time. And as we can see, the active mini pool count has grown as well. That's 10.3% over the past 2 weeks, and annualized out looking very healthy as well at 268%. So the node operator count is a little bit lower, but still quite impressive, 6.6%, and annualized out, the growth is 173%. The new metric that we have is the queue. So the queue has been quite long for some time in terms of getting your mini pool activated, but recently we've seen the amount of ETH in the queue decline a little bit. since the past bi-weekly update, that's dropped by almost 20%, down 19.6%. So could be an indication that balance is being returned, or a little bit more balance is being returned to Rocket Pool, although it does seem to be the case that there are node operators who haven't started the process of converting their 16 ETH mini pools into 8 ETH mini pools. So as that number decreases, obviously other factors include what gas is doing. There's no guarantee that it is on a decline down to zero, so to speak. We could still see it jump up again. I haven't checked lately, but I understand there are at least a couple of node operators with a large amount of mini pools who haven't started that process yet. Whether or not they intend to, if they do, it will certainly increase back up. So all things considered, pretty impressive showing in terms of protocol growth. And as we talked about on a few of these Twitter spaces now, and we'll get into a little bit later on, there are still some catalysts remaining that could help to propel us even further up in terms of the rETH demand to match against new mini pools.
Yeah, and it's interesting, as we look at the mini pool queue, right, the node operator queue, even though it's still quite long in terms of number of mini pools in it, right? It is moving surprisingly very fast, right? I mean, I think that goes hand in hand with the amount of rETH supply, right? You can only onboard that amount of rETH by actually forming that many number of mini pools each period. And so I would say don't let the length of the queue dissuade you from joining. Even though the queue is long, the average time in the queue is actually quite reasonable.
Yeah, exactly. That's something that's important to remember. And it was kind of the other way around, right? When the queue was full and pre-Atlas, people might have gotten the idea that nothing was happening, right? Because they could never mint new rETH. The queue was perpetually full, and it seemed like nothing was happening. But in reality, that queue was continuously being drained and topped up. And similarly here with the mini pool queue, the fact that amount of ETH has decreased by 20% doesn't mean that that's the speed of the queue that as you'll make your way through it. As soon as mini pools are activated, new ones are put into the queue. So it could, to a certain extent, depend on a bit of timing and a bit of luck. We've seen some very large deposits recently, 3,000, 6,000 ETH in one go. That will certainly move the queue along very quickly. But of course, as soon as that happens, people recognize the opportunity to jump in, and the number of mini pools awaiting activation grows again. So yeah, there's a couple of good places to monitor the mini pool queue. One place, of course, is Rocket Scan, but there's a little graph there that shows the deposit pool queue, and just because that line is a flat line in terms of being empty doesn't mean that there's no rETH coming in. As we know, we've seen recently, there is quite a lot of rETH coming in, and it doesn't seem to be slowing down, which is a great sign.
Yeah. In fact, if you look at the rETH growth, it's just it's almost a straight line over that last 2 weeks, even with that exceptional growth. Whether that could be sustained, like you said, but it doesn't seem like it's got much variability to it. It's on a daily basis, pretty much in a straight upward trend. So. Now let's talk a little bit about your favorite subject, when marketing. Maybe you want to walk us through some of the bi-weekly highlights for media and marketing.
Yeah, for sure. There's a few interesting points in here, and one that I think must have happened just as the bi-weekly was going to print or slightly after, which is worth mentioning, although maybe it will be featured next time round, is I think it was the maker cap that got hit within the space of a few hours after weeks, if not months, of slow growth. All of a sudden, there's 20 million USD sitting in there in terms of rETH. So that was another impressive growth metric in terms of the utilization of rETH in DeFi protocols. Of course, that can help to stimulate demand for minting new additional rETH. Some of this growth that we've noticed has also been noticed by other people as well. So this is the first point in the media marketing section, just with a few highlights in terms of media that have picked up on the pretty strong growth. Glassnode and DL News, that's the DeFi Llama News guys, in particular putting out pieces talking about how quickly the TVL has grown. And then another couple of other pieces more on the token trading side, talking about the performance of the RPL token as well. So we talked about some of these large inflows. There's been a little bit of reshuffling lately as the various liquid staking protocols have enabled their withdrawal mechanisms, and recently we've seen 7,720 ETH, so not an insignificant amount, but at the same time, we can get that in a single day, so it's not massive, but that has kind of made its way over to Rocket Pool as part of this reshuffling, and it was the largest such flow that we've seen coming out of other liquid staking protocols. I think it was the 6,000 ETH I was referring to previously. That was a withdrawal and a deposit into Rocket Pool, so that was certainly great to see. And then, at the same time, on the other side of the protocol, as soon as ETH gets deposited to mint new rETH, on the liquid staking side, we see mini pools be spun up, and I think it was someone in trading who noticed that over a certain 3-hour period, there was one address which was a node operator. They were burning so much gas setting up their mini pools. There were dozens, if not over 100, that they hit the second highest ETH burner position. So that was pretty interesting to see.
Wow. Yeah. No. And what's your sense? I mean, I think we're still in the cusp of withdrawals, right? And there is this great reshuffling. What's kind of your sense? I mean, Rocket Pool, we were certainly, the tide lifted all liquid staking protocols, I'd say, right? There was a great reinvestment in Ether staking, as evidenced by the Beacon Chain entry queue, but it looks like Rocket Pool was able to gain a little bit of ground relative to I guess the others in the race, right? The protocol ahead of us and the protocol behind us.
Yep, and also I think it's important to keep in mind that Rocket Pool is in quite a unique position. So if we're looking ahead and behind in terms of other protocols out there, you really can categorize them into two groups, right? The first one, if a protocol is already very well established, it already has a lot of DeFi integrations, either eMode, for example, integration with various wallets to make it very easy to stake. They kind of, once those integrations are in place, they'll have a one-off kind of impact, and from then on, that same effect won't be seen again. With Rocket Pool, some of these are still likely to come, and we know that they're coming soon, they're being worked on, so we have yet to see the effect of this. The other group that you could categorize liquid staking protocols in are those that also lack these integrations but are unlikely to see them, at least in the near term. So I think we can be pretty certain that there's still gas in the tank in terms of some of these pretty strong catalysts for additional growth. It'll help to push Rocket Pool a little bit further up in terms of the market share, whereas for other newer protocols, they have to build up a little bit of trust and Lindy effect and prove that what they're doing makes sense and their smart contracts are properly battle hardened. And it might come later on for sure, but in terms of looking to the foreseeable future, the near future, this kind of balance puts Rocket Pool in a pretty strong position.
Yeah, no, I was thinking with just the number of Twitter spaces we had featuring these other DeFi protocols where rETH is now an accepted token or an integrated token in their platform, that synergy really does have, to kind of steal a term from the previous speaker, this flywheel effect, right? The more uses for rETH there is in the DeFi ecosystem, the more, I'd say the more valuable or the more sought after it is as an asset class to hold as an LSD. The other thing I've been seeing growth in is kind of DAOs, right? These large treasuries of DAOs. You want to talk a little bit about the Aave governance proposal?
Yeah. So Aave have been doing a lot of great stuff with rETH lately, both in terms of the product that they offer. I mentioned eMode. I probably mentioned that on pretty much every Twitter space lately, and there's a couple of pretty great memes in the Discord about it too. But now they're looking to diversify some of their treasury funds. So for DAOs, it can be a little bit tricky working out how to run a node, right? Because it is a physical piece of hardware. If you want to control it and not outsource it to a third party that most of the time you have to trust, it would have to be someone in the DAO who takes physical possession of the node. I guess an example can be the way that you look after the rocket scientist ODAO node, Ken. But when we're talking about potentially staking hundreds or thousands of ETH for a DAO where we might have people who are quite anonymous, or their location might not be known, or they may not be willing to kind of provide any of this information, which is absolutely fine, but it just makes operating a node pretty tricky. So thankfully there's a great solution, which is liquid staking. There have been cases of DAOs staking their treasury with liquid staking protocols. In the case of Aave, this is a proposal, I believe it was their first kind of steps towards deploying their treasury ETH into liquid staking. So it was a mixture of rETH and stETH. And great to see, and not only for Aave, but hopefully to show to other DAOs as well out there that this is an option. And not only can this help them to earn a passive income and rewards on their treasury, but also, of course, to help to secure Ethereum itself, help to keep it decentralized. That's obviously in every DAO's best interest. And I'm not sure if it was a little bit further along in... Oh yeah, maybe I will jump down a little bit because it's a similar topic. We do have, towards the end of the media marketing section, a point about Gnosis DAO. So that's actually gone to Snapshot. Make a call out there if anyone has any Gnosis voting power, if they're a governance participator. There is a Snapshot vote live to consider diversifying a bit of their treasury into rETH. So in this case, Gnosis DAO is a little bit further down the track. They've already liquid staked some of their ETH, but there's a suggestion that maybe diversification into rETH being more decentralized and less exposed to certain tail risks might be the way to go, especially considering that point of helping to keep Ethereum decentralized. If you're building on a blockchain, you're building in an ecosystem, it's kind of in your best interest to keep it healthy. In addition, there's a soft proposal that's been created in the BitDAO governance forum. So that's for them to consider liquid staking some of their treasury with Rocket Pool. That's still very much early days, and to date BitDAO hasn't liquid staked any of their treasury, so this would be kind of a first step for them. There is a little bit of work that needs to be done to ensure that the DAOs can kind of execute the staking transaction in a safe way, but it's relatively straightforward. And hoping to see some progress with some of these DAOs, maybe even new DAOs. Maybe someone listening in on this call participates in a DAO somewhere that has some ETH and they want to put it to work. Liquid staking is a great way to do that.
Excellent. You also mentioned in here something that at first I thought, while you're talking about Candy Crush, something called Lunar Crush. What is Lunar Crush, and why is it important?
This comes up from time to time on the bi-weekly update. And so Lunar Crush is a platform that I like. It's a social media listening tool. Essentially, it aggregates a lot of data to see what people are talking about. It tries to filter out a lot of the spam content, which there can be quite a lot of on Twitter. People just posting or tagging protocols because they get good engagement. But Lunar Crush helps to filter out all of that and has a couple of metrics based on different variables, and they rank the performance of various tokens and coins. In this case, Rocket Pool got to number 5 on their list, which is pretty impressive considering how many other hundreds and thousands of projects and protocols and tokens and coins are out there. And it was primarily, I believe, a result of towards the start of this week or the weekend, depending on your time zone, there was a little bit of chatter around crypto Twitter about liquid staking in general, some comparisons being made between different protocols, and a lot of engagement on Rocket Pool content, which was great to see and helped to kind of propel us up to near the top, which is a pretty impressive showing. Obviously, every little bit helps out. Whenever anyone posts a thread or helps to answer questions on Twitter, all of that activity kind of gets combined into this Lunar Crush alt rank, as they call it. So a few times now that Rocket Pool has gotten into the top kind of ranking there, and we're back into number 5, which is a pretty good showing.
Well, my hat's off to the intern and to Darren, right? I mean, Darren's been on a whole bunch of panels recently. In fact, so many panels, I think I've lost count. What are some of the highlights of those panels that he's been on?
So there's been a few panels in the past couple of weeks. There was one panel just yesterday, which obviously didn't make it into this bi-weekly, but will be in the next one. And there's also at least one panel coming up. I think that's later tonight, Australian time. But one that was a particularly entertaining panel, and I really think people should go and have a listen. Very informative, but very entertaining as well. It was hosted by Staking Rewards. So if you're not familiar, Staking Rewards is a website all about staking, and the host was a cat. So I'm not sure exactly how it was done, some kind of filter, but it was a talking cat. But the other panelists as well were pretty great. So there were representatives from Obel, Alluvial, Eigenlayer, and Coinbase. So a pretty good combination, along with Langers from Rocket Pool. That was a live stream on YouTube, and there's a link there in the bi-weekly update if you want to go and check it out if you missed it. For the recent Twitter space that was hosted by I Am Token, and you should be able to find that on their Twitter account. Langers was also on that one, and there were representatives from Frax and Stakewise as well. So some interesting topics that were brought up during that Twitter space. Maybe a little bit controversial, we could say. Also worth a listen. And then later on tonight, in just over 12 hours or so, Langers is back, hosted by CoinGecko, so should be a relatively good turnout for this one, I would imagine. And this time, Frax is back alongside Stater, so that will no doubt be an interesting chat as well.
Somebody's got to put a post in trading to the one with the cat filter on there. I've got most of these, but I missed that one, so it sounds like I missed a good one. So I gotta go back and watch that one on replay there for it. What else is going on here? It sounds like we've got a couple of incentivized mining pools, and all nodes had a recent announcement.
Yeah. I think I failed to mention our own Twitter Spaces, didn't I? So these days we're getting a guest on pretty much every single Twitter Space, and we're booked well into June, probably starting to look at July slots as well. So the last two we had guests from Gitcoin and FlashStake. So for Gitcoin, they were chatting about their approach to funding public goods and also their recent ODAL seat. And then for FlashStake, there were kind of two parts there. One was a campaign that they were running to promote the launch of their new flash staking system with rETH. And then, of course, there was also a bit of chat about that opportunity as well for rETH holders, liquid stakers, both with that and then also this new liquidity mining pool and any DeFi, including Rocket Pool itself. Very important that everyone does their own research, fully understand the products, make sure that they're safe, secure, and what they are providing makes sense for your own personal situation. Oh, all nodes as well, yeah. So yeah, this is something new from all nodes, and we keep in touch with them in terms of ensuring that they can support all the latest Rocket Pool upgrades. So in this case, they're supporting the conversion of a solo Ethereum validator across to either an 8 ETH or a 16 ETH Rocket Pool mini pools. So that may be an option for some people. We saw when Atlas was enabled, not only a decent number of people migrating across from solo node operators, but also brand new 8 ETH mini pools being launched from new node operators, which kind of suggests that these people may have had staking experience before if they were ready to go set up with their hardware to click the button as soon as Atlas was live. Whether or not there'll be kind of any demand now from all nodes, be interesting to see, but that functionality is there, and they've always been great in supporting the latest Rocket Pool updates.
Yeah, and then I saw you also put in here that Fee announced a quest for, that features Rocket Pool. I've never done one of these DeFi exploration quests. Have you?
No, can't say that I have actually. But in this case, a little bit of collaboration that we did with Fee or Fi, but probably more relevant to their community. Obviously anyone from the Rocket Pool community, feel free to head over and check it out. But there's, at the very least, some interesting artwork that they've put together in terms of little cartoon rockets and rovers and bits and pieces that represent these different quests, such as liquid staking ETH with Rocket Pool.
Oh, interesting. I'm going to have to go check that one out. The next item you put on here, I think is pretty interesting because, our previous speaker, Josh, here, when he was talking about, L2, or maybe it was rETH earlier, I forget, one of the calls earlier today, was talking about, we really need to be thinking about transacting on L2s and leaving Ethereum L1 as the settlement layer. And I see that there's some improvements here on cross-chain swaps. What do you know about that, and where do you see that going for Rocket Pool?
So this is a protocol that reached out and just said that they're going to support, in this case it was RPL, so not for liquid stakers, or at least not yet, and they're just one example of making it easier to move between different chains. Say you have an asset on a different chain, instead of trying to exchange that for ETH and then purchasing RPL, you can do it in one go. Not a kind of collaboration or an endorsement, but just letting people know that there is interest from these protocols in terms of supporting Rocket Pool's tokens, more so between different chains and between different layers, although I'm sure there is support for moving between layers too. But yeah, to that point, it is something that with gas being as high as it's been lately, it's likely the next time we get some real activity on the blockchain, we're going to be going back to those days of anything in double digits being low gas. I kind of forgotten what that was like. We've been too lucky for too long, fortunately or unfortunately, however you look at it, with even some single digit gas. So good to be thinking ahead, and even people who are comfortable transacting all day every day on mainnet, on ETH, may change their mind if gas goes back up to where it has been in the past or even higher.
Interesting. And your last thing that she had, surprisingly, in the marketing area, it was kind of interesting in integrations, is actually a post by Kane that was talking about EIP 7002. Why is Kane so excited about this one?
So I was tossing up whether or not to put this in here. I suppose I was thinking more about like external media or coverage about the industry. And we do have a very packed R&D section full of Rocket Pool team R&D work. So that's busy enough as it is. But if you click through to that tweet, you'll see that the title of the EIP is called Execution Layer Triggerable Exits. So Kane's tweet says, this EIP paves the way to even higher capital efficiency in decentralized staking pools through lower bonding requirements. And essentially what that means is when LEB 4s, possibly soon. So this is still early days, but an indication that Ethereum is moving in the right direction to a point where there may be sufficient features to allow Rocket Pool to implement LEB4s or whatever it might be in a safe manner. So right now, probably not something that's needed with the at least short-term demand for new mini pools, but that may not be the case forever. We still maintain that long-term there will be more demand for rETH, for liquid stakers, than there is ability for node operators to support it. So, and maybe this is a good segue, something to think about in terms of the roadmap going forwards to determine where Rocket Pool should to look to the next upgrade, Saturn and beyond. What should be included in there?
Yeah, and it is kind of interesting on a couple of points because one of the things that I've been dabbling a little bit in is trying to understand the force withdraws, right? And there's a document I was working on prior to a couple of these EIPs that have come out, and every time I keep working on it, another change to these EIPs occurs. But it is very interesting, as many of the folks listening may know, that as we reduce the collateral by the node operators, the area of risk that continues to grow is MEV theft, right? And as the protocol matures, there's probably a couple of counters that can be used to prevent that, right? They're talking about enshrined proposer builder separation that might prevent a node operator from redirecting the MEV, right? There's talk about MEV burning or a reallocation of it. But one of the things that certainly helps to prevent malicious mini pool operators or node operators is to be able to have these forced exits from the protocol. And I could definitely see how this EIP, if it continues to be reviewed positively like it is, really would offer that ability not only to Rocket Pool, but many of these other decentralized staking pools like Rocket Pool could be really good. And I saw Wander had posted something on the NodeSet Discord about another one, EIP 3288, that has non-fiery exit messages that might, if I just read it quickly, but it might even make the Cancun upgrade here, the Deneb Cancun upgrade, perhaps as one of the, they said drivers and passengers. This might be one of the passengers on that upgrade. So things are definitely looking very positive, that all collectively, I think, really make ultra ULEBs, very much set of mythological, very much feasible in terms of a risk profile. So, I kind of thought, out of all the posts, that was probably the most important one, and it was literally the last one on the list in the biweekly update. So,
saving the best to last.
Yeah, literally. And then, one other question on marketing that's kind of coming up, right, is, and I guess I don't have to ask you when hiring on here, because I did see that there's, two positions. One, they're actively recruiting for, right, which is another dev on the technical side. But it did sound like that they were getting close to finding an ideal candidate to make an offer to for the integrations one. And I just wondered if maybe you could talk a little bit about how you see that position helping with the marketing and the communication side, or where does it fit in the ecosystem of Rocket Pool?
So we've had a little bit of a chat within the team about how kind of roles and responsibilities will be split out, but right now it's not necessarily set in stone. I think at least the way that Rocket Pool operates as a team, it is a fairly, high trust team. The roles, to a certain extent, as much as they can be, are pretty fluid. And it's one of the benefits of working in, a small, tightly knit team, that you don't need necessarily a lot of structure and overhead and management to keep everything ticking along. So in terms of obviously me, up until now, there hasn't necessarily been a whole lot of crossover with the other 5 team members, with obviously my role being non-technical, but that's going to change. And one idea that I did have was the potential transition from Rocket Pool doing, I guess, mostly to a certain extent passive business development, to taking a bit more of an active role. So going out and hunting around and actively building these and maintaining these relationships. So far we've done a pretty good job, because there's kind of been some natural steps in terms of the pathway that Rocket Pool would develop. But going forwards, we may need some more resource in this area, especially as Rocket Pool continues to grow. We continue to gain a greater list of integrations, and having one and a bit of langers, one person, me, and a bit of langers looking after them all, may not make sense in the longer term, especially considering that right now the amount of ETH that's staked is still relatively low. There's still room to grow in terms of not only the size of the industry, but its relative importance within Ethereum. And we very well may see a kind of increase in protocols wanting to build on liquid staking protocols or work with. And if this does kind of come all in a rush, like say another bull market, it could be a little overwhelming, and certainly good to have additional resource kind of in place to deal with that. But it sounds like also that this might not be something that happens until kind of going into the second half of the year, at least maybe a couple months away. So still a little bit of time. But yeah, it's going to be exciting and good to see the team growing. To go from 6 to 8, it's just an extra 2 people, but it's kind of an increase of 1/3 in headcount. So pretty significant for Rocket Pool for sure.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to that, and yeah, it'd be very interesting to see all the capabilities that the team will have beyond what it has now. I wonder if, kind of keeping in the same model of taking the biweekly from in reverse mode here, I wonder if we could talk a little bit about integrations. You mentioned a couple of integrations in the biweekly. Any of those you want to highlight?
Again, there's been, since this was published, a few little developments. In the case of Sturdy Finance, the first one on that list there, they had an SIP number 6, which was up for voting. It has since passed. In fact, I think that happened overnight, about 8 hours ago, and it now provides an opportunity for liquidity providers that have an rETH ETH LP on balancer to be a little bit more of a degen lever up. It's another potentially pretty powerful DeFi integration, and can act as a catalyst to stimulate the minting of additional new rETH, which of course right now is something that we definitely need. And I will just quickly, Langus is already up as a speaker, so maybe we can do a quick mic check and then potentially jump back to the front of the bi-weekly.
Hello. Can you
There
hear
we
me?
go.
Sorry, headphone connections.
No worries. You're just in time for the good questions. First, how are you doing?
I'm well. How are you guys?
We're doing really good. We took the bi-weekly in reverse order because I did really want to save two of the most important topics that I think are near and dear to your heart for when you were on the call. And those two topics were kind of the R&D side a little bit here, talking about some of the brainstorming and road mapping you've had about bringing some technology improvements or some design improvements to Rocket Pool, and wanted to see if you'd like to talk about that. And then on just as important side is some of the governance that I know you and Val have been working on in terms of kind of the direction of especially the ODAO and the Constitution for Rocket Pool. Which of those two would you like to take on first?
Let's do the ODAO first.
Okay.
So yeah, Val has it was the kind of like Val, Yorick, Patches, me, and Dave as well. We're kind of like on the initial drafting team, I guess. But Val has definitely done most of the heavy lifting. He's doing some sterling work with that stuff. So so no, that's been really good. So that's now out for the community to kind of like read through and kind of see, comment on, see where we go with it. It's kind of the idea behind it was that it was going to be at, I think it was like at 60%. You know what I mean? So basically to have some ideas out there so that it can kick off the discussion. And I think it's good. The discussion has been kicked off. So that's really great. Some good feedback so far. So we'll kind of incorporate that as we go, and then eventually we'll kind of get to a point where we can, edit an RPIP and get it voted on and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, and I just would like to kind of echo to the community, take the time to comment on it. I think that they created the framework or the outline in terms of suggesting a couple of models or a skeleton, a framework, if you will, but we're really looking for comments on it, whether positive or constructive criticism towards it. So if you're listening to this thing and maybe haven't had a chance to look at it, just put it down, because whatever feedback you can give on it, I think would be really, really good.
Yeah, I mean, the main outline really, so that people know, is that it goes over, there's kind of like an ODAO constitution, which kind of goes into like the values and responsibilities or duties of the ODAO. And then there's kind of like an inflation piece where essentially it's the reduction of ODAO payments, and what that would look like potentially. And then there was one that we could kind of throw out there because it just makes sense to have to round it out, and that was like a PDAO sort of definition. But definitely kind of have a look at it and comment.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting because it kind of dovetails a little bit with the work that Nashua has been doing about even just, what are the existing roles of the ODAO that could eventually be done with protocol improvements or additional technology, right? What can actually replace a human from doing it to just being smart contract run? So I think it aligns very well. There was also RPIPs that passed, right? 19 and 20. 19 included a metric for ODAO health clarity, and 20 an expansion to the IMC charter. But Langers, I wonder if you could just talk a little bit about that ODAO health clarity check. What is that, and what is the team gonna do for that heartbeat, I guess you might call it?
Yeah. So at the moment, kind of monitoring the health of the ODAO is quite tricky, because mainly because when the ODAO kind of like submit their responses to the duties that they do, it reaches consensus and then it kind of stops, and you don't get any more kind of submissions. So it's actually quite difficult to tell who's upgrading, who is basically who's on the right version of the software. Do they have any technical issues? There might be somebody who's not submitting. It doesn't mean that they're offline. It just means that they're just late to the party. So it's very, very difficult. And so determining whether an ODAO member is down or is kind of not in the right version is very difficult, because it's almost probabilistic. You have to kind of like look over several days and kind of go, there's a lot of red blocks in terms of, we have some monitoring that kind of like checks. If there's a lot of red blocks, we kind of reach out, but it's probabilistic. They could be unlucky 7 days in a row, or they could be down. So one of those things to give transparency just within the ODAO itself, in terms of being able to manage the membership and the actual the outcomes of the ODAO, but also so that we give transparency to the community on how the ODAO is performing as well. And so there's a few different ideas about how we go about that. And I know Joe's been working a little bit on with kind of VAL and the PDAO in general to figure out what the kind of best way to do that is. But the idea is that we roll out something that gives us much greater transparency on things like versions and whether people are on or offline.
Excellent. Yeah. Speaking as a ODAO node operator, it would be very, very helpful. Like with my personal node, it's always great. I've got beaconshaw.in that texts me the moment I miss a attestation or a proposal, and with the ODAO node though, I just have to keep an eye on it, right? I don't get some little alert saying, hey, something went wrong. So that would be great to have a little heartbeat monitor on there to make certain everything's well loved for and working just as expected on there.
That's it, exactly. And the other thing we kind of mentioned in there was like it was the R&D stuff. So the R&D stuff around ZK, zero knowledge proofs and optimistic proofs. So that kind of research, the idea behind that research is to and the optimistic proofs actually were recommended by Nashua. So and I know Kane and Nashua have been working quite closely and bouncing things off each other in terms of that. So the idea behind using that stuff is to essentially remove the trust requirement from the ODAO. Eventually, it means that we could potentially open it up to, instead of using an ODAO like a curated set, we could actually make the ODAO permissionless, or that duty permissionless. But we have to kind of like figure out the steps to kind of get there. But the idea there is to kind of at least make it trustless. And so with that,
we have been diving into zero knowledge proofs because that technology is coming along really, really fast, and there's a lot of players in that space that are reaching out and have kind of some really interesting kind of technology. But we're evaluating that because that's kind of the ultimate goal, in the sense that ZK technology is very, very efficient. Well, it's very efficient in one sense. It's very efficient in the sense that you don't have to worry about this interactive kind of proofing thing. It takes less time to prove. But actually, to generate a proof actually takes quite a while. So there's kind of like this balance that we have to kind of look into. So yes, we've definitely been looking at that, and that's mainly around like network balances, actually. Potentially other things as well, but particularly like slashing, some of the other duties that ODAO kind of does. But yeah, we're kind of mainly looking at it from a network balances perspective, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of fascinating to read the bi-weekly update here that talked about some of this stuff, and I guess I understand that one of the stand-ups, Kane, did a presentation about where, ZK proofs might be useful to Rocket Pool, and I just kind of wonder from like a GM perspective here, how do you actually like evaluate something like this? Do you send the team off to training somewhere, or do you ever do like a lunch and learn where you have a ZK expert present on this? And if so, you ever think of opening any of those meetings to the community as a whole? Because it would be kind of interesting to learn about this emerging technology.
Yeah. So essentially we did a lunch and learn. So Kane, so basically, I put Kane on kind of deep diving into ZK stuff. I think he already started doing it for some other reason, so he spent like a few days kind of diving into it and talking to a few people that we've been speaking to. So there are a number of experts that we've been kind of talking to. So he was bouncing a little bit of stuff off them, and really just getting a handle on where the technology is. Obviously, the basic definition, I think all of us had like a rough idea about what ZK was, but what you need to have enough knowledge to be able to see how it can be translated into product or design or whatever, and that's the hard part, is understanding it that deeply, knowing where the constraints are, and that sort of thing. So he dived into it, basically prepared like a presentation for us on like a Friday afternoon. We all kind of jumped on, and he outlined ZK, all the terminology, down to kind of like what are the benefits, obviously, what are the techniques people are using, what are the proving schemes, and what are their pros and cons, and then into kind of a little bit near the end about how we think we might be able to use it within Rocket Pool. I think the next step for us in terms of that is to engage more deeply with some of the other players that we've got. So the conclusion that we've kind of come to is that it's not quite there for us at the moment. We think that an optimistic kind of thing might work better in the short to medium. Like in the next 12 months, I think ZK technology is going to improve immensely, but the proving times are very, very long. So that's where it's going to get tricky. So that we've still got a lot of research actually to kind of like nail it, and that's where we get those other experts in to make sure that our assumptions are actually correct, and that we're not underselling it, and so we'll kind of reach out to those partners and start kind of making those evaluating those things.
Okay, interesting. In terms of kind of like the R&D side too, I suppose one of the other things, although it was listed under governance, is Joe had posted something on the DAO forum about a revised penalty system and was looking for feedback. You want to talk a little bit about what that is, and why does Rocket Pool need a penalty system, and where is the team going to go with that?
Yeah. So when the whole kind of MEV boost stuff happened, I think this was like pre Redstone. It was, or maybe it was, yeah. Anyway, I can't remember exactly when. But essentially, with the execution rewards, at the moment, a node operator sets their fee recipient. Now, in practice, a lot of people use the Rocket Pool Smart Node Stack, and it handles that all for you. But there is a chance that you could set the fee recipient to a different address, and in that particular case, you could be getting more rewards than you should be. And so we do have a penalty system built into the mini pool contracts. So if kind of anyone did decide to do it in any kind of large degree, we do have a penalty system there. The only thing about it is we just don't like it. It's not as good as we want it to be. So we are just reevaluating that and trying to figure out what that penalty system should look like. So so that's what we're doing at the moment, and the design for that penalty system is up, so we can so that people can kind of have a look at it, see where it's going, and obviously contribute to that as well.
Okay, interesting. And one of the other posts that I think hit the DAO forum there was one about road mapping, and I thought this was pretty interesting because you had mentioned this a couple of weeks ago on one of the calls, that you really wanted the community to have a say in the direction and growth of Rocket Pool and where some of the team's resources were allocated. And we created a little side channel, a thread, and solicited a lot of feedback from the community, and I assembled it in a document. And then I saw that the team had also kind of done a little bit of a brainstorming, and you had taken the time to kind of share your thoughts and overlap them between the two, and I thought that was very interesting. But tell us a little bit more about that, and kind of what are you looking for in that roadmap? When do you decide that roadmap, and how do we decide what's next for the next upgrade?
Yeah, so I think with each kind of release, we've gotten, like, back in the day when we I guess first went to mainnet, the core team was kind of hand down the roadmap on a stone tablet, or in this case like a PDF, and with each release we've kind of moved away from that and moved towards more of this kind of like community co-developed roadmap. So Redstone, there was a little bit of that in there. Atlas was definitely a lot more community involved. I mean, we certainly couldn't have done it without the community. That there's so much stuff that went in there from the community. And so in this way, I just wanted to start off on the right foot in terms of go in with both feet essentially. So in terms of that, I mean, we've already gotten to a certain degree. So there's a kind of a process. So the first part is ideation, where we just there's no bad ideas, and so everyone's throwing kind of ideas in. The next kind of phase is kind of prioritization and feasibility. So we're trying to get an idea of what themes we should be prioritizing, and so that's kind of shaking out in the discourse around the roadmap post that I sent through. So we're picking up clear themes that we should be tackling first, and so once those kind of themes and the priorities kind of laid out, then it's really about the team kind of going through and figuring out what the feasibility of each of the things are, and what is a good ordering of doing things from the technical level. And that's something that again we're kind of moving to this culture of we're trying to develop within the team a culture of continual kind of community engagement and and co-development. Then we got, as you know, and you are one of these people. There's some very switched on people within the community, and some fantastic contributors. So being able to leverage them to either come up with those ideas or to refine those ideas and to have that kind of back and forth is really, really important. And we've seen a lot of value in that over the last few releases. So we're going to continue on with that from day one, and try and get as early feedback as possible on these ideas. Obviously, there's a little bit of us going away and kind of like thinking things through and then coming back. But we try and like touch base and keep people in the loop and engage people and get their contributions as much as possible. Then we can start thinking about release planning. When what do we want to put in the next release? What is a good kind of rough timing for the release, and that sort of thing. So we have to kind of like go through those steps to kind of narrow down the scope, and then got to a point where you can kind of go, okay, yeah, we can deliver that in that amount of time, and that sort of thing.
Yeah. And so you're thinking you're still in kind of the feasibility determination stage. Is that where we're at right now in that process? Yeah, kind of
priority and feasibility. So the post that I did on the forum, that's had loads of comments on it, and so I'm kind of reviewing that on a daily basis to pick out those themes that people are mentioning, making sure that we're kind of like prioritizing the things that are important to the community, and then it's really kind of talking with Kane and Joe, and to a large extent Nick as well, to kind of like figure out, okay, so we have these priorities, how are we going to deliver on those themes, and so that's kind of like a little bit of design work to kind of figure out what we would actually do, and then it's kind of feasibility and design. Basically, this is kind of this two things. So we kind of like prioritization and feasibility. The thing is, software development is not necessarily a linear thing all the time. There is a bit of like this kind of looping back over things, but we'll kind of like refine that over the next couple of weeks, to try and figure out what we're going to deliver, and make sure that the community are kind of involved in those design decisions and that sort of thing as well.
Yeah, and a couple follow-along questions on that, because I know people will be kind of interested, is one, I think maybe it was on the last, just the chit-chat channel, I think Kane was mentioning something about the ideal of more frequent, smaller releases, but the floated around code name of Saturn to me means like a mega release. What's your thought? Are they going to be smaller, more frequent, or will this next release be another big one like the Atlas was?
Yeah, I wouldn't read into the name too much. the name's kind of randomly picked. Or I think Joe was very keen on Saturn. But I think it is tricky. There is like a trade-off. So larger releases are easier in the sense that we can book in audits, and we can get it all done in one go. And that was because auditors were hard to get hold of. Auditors seem a bit easier to get hold of nowadays. So that might change the way that we can deliver things a bit. So we'll definitely we'll reach out to the audit teams and kind of like figure out that aspect of it. If they're more available, then we could probably release smaller. In fact, I would prefer to deliver smaller releases. Atlas was a big release for us. It was very, very big, and so I don't think we would like to do as big a release as we've done with Atlas. Again, I think we would prefer to do kind of like a smaller, more often release. But we'll kind of figure that out. We need to figure out scoping, and so we can figure out what comes first and what the critical path is for each of the things that we're delivering, and then we need to kind of like figure out the resourcing, the auditing, and all of that sort of stuff as well. So there's quite a few things that kind of feed into it, but we will kind of line everything up so that we can and communicate as we go, ideally.
Excellent. Excellent, excellent. And this is one of the few calls where I don't have to ask you when hiring, because you've got a job post. Anything you can share on that? And have you actually thought about a multi-hire? That's where you post one job and you hire more than one qualified applicant.
Yeah, I think at the moment there's one. At the moment there's one position. We will see. It actually sometimes it might depend on the candidates that we have. We invest. We're going to invest quite a lot of time in this hiring process. So it would make sense to do a multi-hire. But if we find two candidates that are absolutely amazing, then we'll definitely consider it. But at the moment there's one role. Actually, there's two roles, but one role we've already kind of filled, and that's kind of like a ecosystem lead, and then the other one is the development lead, developer role.
Okay, excellent here. And then just a few last things I see from the biweekly as we kind of jumped around a couple of these sections here, but there is the latest PDAO Treasury report that was released that had the allocations and expenditures for both the INC and the GMC in the most recent budget period. And if you haven't seen it, there's been a lot of GMC-related chat out there, and I think one of the biggest ones was posted by Schifrin on support of the entire GMC group that talked about taking a lot of the community feedback about the latest reward system and process. We're kind of building the governance in the GMC at the same time we're executing on the grants awards, and there's a proposal now to do a rolling award system that was posted on the DAO forum. The ideal for this is that right now the initial design was to have grants open up only on a quarterly basis, but speaking personally as a member of the GMC, it became very challenging because it was such a long gap between when the call for grant applications would go out, and it didn't allow a very long period for an interactive discussion in which applicants could refine and revise their applications. And so, based on a lot of feedback in there, the GMC is proposing a kind of a rolling award system. So I encourage everybody here that is listening to comment on that and see what your thoughts are. The other key thing that was discovered is there's actually quite a lot of work to administering a grants program, right? You wouldn't think it, but there is. It takes time to organize the grants, assign a number to them, distribute them to the members of the committee, make certain we capture their comments, try to reach a consensus on it, communicate back to the applicant. So if it's something that could be revised, eventually get a vote on it, track that vote, communicate it out to the community, track the payments on the grants. Sometimes these grants have milestones and certain waypoints, and then track it. So the other thing you'll see out there is there's a proposal to actually create an administrative position for it. And so definitely take time to comment on that. I do believe strongly that it does take an administrator to run an effective program. And some of the challenges we're having is just it's right now volunteers only. So it's hard to get that commitment out there. And last but not least, on the GMC side is there is in the governance there is actually a cap on retrospective awards. And most of the applications to date have been for work that was done before the GMC. And so it's got the problem where it actually can't pay awarded grants because of this cap on there. So there's a proposal out there to remove the cap, and we need community input on there. I don't know, either Mav or Darren, if you have any comments about that GMC stuff, but I would encourage people definitely to comment on those three proposals to the community.
Yeah, the GMC do a great job. It certainly is one of the heaviest in terms of engagement that you guys have to do, the kind of administrative stuff you have to do. You know, there's so much kind of involved in that. So I kind of take my hat off to you for kind of like doing that. I think it makes sense to kind of do I guess it's probably a trade-off, but in terms of like the time you guys have to put in, but also kind of making sure that we are, you know, getting that throughput of grants and bounties. But yeah, that makes sense to kind of make it less than quarterly. I think what was the other piece? The administrative position, that makes perfect sense. It's great. And it's great to see kind of, it all kind of happening. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's people kind of taking on that role and kind of delivering on that. So that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Removing the cap makes sense. The GMC can already, they have their charter anyway, and if it makes sense to remove that, I guess.
Yeah, and I'm really looking forward to the more kind of interactive process on grant applications. I think it will benefit both the applicants that apply. They can get some tailored feedback and more real-time feedback, so they could, either adjust their application, and then the same thing. It will actually kind of reward all of the Rocket Pool community, because we'll actually get products that I think are more aligned with the utilitarian or the usefulness to the community in there. So I'm actually really looking forward to having a couple of these improvements to the GMC process. But it's certainly due to a lot of the efforts of all the committee members that have been working quite diligently on, like I say, fixing the process and also trying to administer the grants at the same time. And so that I think we've jumped around a little bit, but I think I've gone through the list here and covered most of the stuff. But Darren, since you're on, are there any things that we haven't covered in the time that you've been on the call that you feel it's important for the community to know? Any bread or items that didn't make it into the bi-weekly that you want to share?
No, I don't know. I'm on the CoinGecko thing later on tonight. That's on my thing at the moment. No, I don't think so. I think we've covered the main things actually. Yeah, no, that's cool.
Okay. Matt, what about from your end here? You've been here the entire time on this kind of double header call?
I think it's the same. There's certainly a lot happening. I don't know if we talked about Gravatar, but obviously we did have the separate space with them earlier, and a recording of that will be made available, so that's really the best source to learn about them. And yeah, probably just worth highlighting again that even since this was published, there's been some developments already in some of these integrations and media and marketing areas, so things are still continuing to tick along quite nicely.
How crazy was the maker? Thing? Did you see that, Ken?
No. Was this the one where somebody was the cat or something else?
So no, I got like a message through saying that that they were going to kind of migrate us to Spark, which is their new debt protocol. And it basically is because, well, some of the reason is because we're under 20 million in our debt ceiling. And so I think we were at like 5 million at that point. And so I kind of like posted something in trading, and I just said, I'll leave this here. And then suddenly we hit the debt ceiling at 20 million. That was quite funny.
No, I missed that one on there. It's kind of hard to keep all this stuff. In fact, one of the things I think we'd be remiss, as I'm just going back over the show notes here, is we didn't mention that there is an update to the Smart node, right? I guess it's 1.9.5. This is a kind of a higher urgency one for Prism and Nimbus users. That's in there, at least getting that updated to prevent the finalization challenges to the blockchain. But that is out there, and I guess it's also a required update for the ODAO members because there's a new tree gen formula in there, if I'm recalling correctly. Do I have that right? At least from version 1.94?
I think so. I've forgotten what it is. Sorry.
Yeah, so I guess if you're an ODAO member, check the releases. Make certain you're on the most recent version. There's a deadline coming up for there. If you're a node operator, definitely it's version 1.9.5 because of a bug in 1.9.4 that's in there. And yeah, Patches is saying it's the balance submissions that have changed, not tree gen. So
yeah, that's it.
Thank you very much, Patches, for that. On there. Well, I think we've covered most of the stuff on here. Any last thoughts from both of you before we call it the end of a long community call?
No. Thank you very much, Ken, and thank you everybody for listening in.
Join us tomorrow for another chit chat, and I'll endeavour to have a much larger list of soundboard sounds for everyone to play with. It was quite entertaining last time.
Yeah, what was our Mav, just to get you to say it, what was the favorite clip from the soundboard?
Many such cases.
Thank you very much. All right, well, I'll let everyone go. It's been a pleasure again, and I suppose the next thing on the events channel is probably the CoinGecko call that starts with less than 12 hours from now.
Yeah, that's it. More than 12 hours, actually. Just more than 12 hours. 13 hours or something.
13 hours, okay. All right, well, we'll let everyone go. Have a great day.
See you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.